The story of Cain and Abel is one of the earliest and most tragic tales in the Bible. Found in Genesis 4, it follows the lives of the first children born to Adam and Eve after their expulsion from the Garden of Eden. Cain and Abel represent two paths of human behavior, one led by obedience and faith, and the other corrupted by jealousy and pride. This story introduces themes of worship, personal responsibility, sin, and divine justice. It also emphasizes the consequences of allowing anger and envy to grow unchecked, making Cain and Abel a timeless lesson on the human condition. Cain and Abel were the first children of Adam and Eve. After being cast out of Eden, Adam and Eve began a new life, and Cain was their firstborn son. Soon after, Abel was born. These two brothers were the first humans to be born into the world, symbolizing a new beginning for humanity. They grew up in a world still touched by the consequences of their parents' disobedience. Despite this, they had the opportunity to choose right or wrong for themselves. Their story sets the stage for human moral struggle and the importance of individual decisions. It reminds readers that even those closest to creation were not immune to sin. Cain became a farmer, and Abel became a shepherd. As the two brothers matured, they chose different paths in life. Cain became a tiller of the ground, working the soil to grow crops. Abel became a keeper of sheep, tending his flocks with care. These roles reflected two major occupations of early human society: agriculture and animal husbandry. Both were essential and honorable, and their work symbolized human labor and dependence on the earth after the fall. This detail not only shows their individuality, but also sets the scene for the offerings they would later bring to God, revealing that the issue was not in their profession, but in the heart. Both brothers brought offerings to God in an act of worship. Both Cain and Abel brought offerings to the Lord from their respective labors. Cain offered fruits from the ground, while Abel brought the best of his flock, the fat portions of the firstborn lambs. These offerings were significant because they represented the brothers' desire to connect with and honor God. However, what was most important was the intention behind the offerings, not just the substance. This moment highlights that God desires heartfelt worship and genuine devotion, not empty rituals. It reminds us that how we give matters just as much as what we give. God accepted Abel's offering, but rejected Cain's. God looked with favor on Abel's offering, but he did not accept Cain's. This rejection deeply hurt Cain, causing anger and confusion. The Bible does not say exactly why Cain's offering was rejected, but it implies that Abel's gift was given in faith and sincerity, while Cain's was not. God sees beyond appearances into the heart of the giver. This divine response teaches that worship must come from a place of humility and righteousness. The differing outcomes of their offerings sparked the tension that would lead to tragedy, revealing how pride and resentment can twist even our attempts to worship. Cain became angry and jealous of Abel. Cain's reaction to God's rejection was one of intense anger and envy. Instead of examining his own heart and actions, he focused his frustration on his brother. Jealousy blinded Cain to the truth and ignited a dangerous emotional storm. He saw Abel not as a brother to learn from, but as a rival who had stolen God's favor. This inner turmoil grew unchecked, and the seed of bitterness began to take root. The story emphasizes that unchecked emotions like jealousy can lead us away from God and set us on a path of destruction if not confronted early. God warned Cain to resist sin and master his emotions. In his mercy, God confronted Cain and warned him, "Sin is crouching at your door. It desires to have you, but you must rule over it." This moment was crucial. God gave Cain a chance to turn from his anger and choose what is right. The image of sin as a crouching predator highlights its dangerous and lurking nature. God didn't abandon Cain, but instead offered guidance and a chance to overcome the temptation. This key moment shows that even when we are angry or discouraged, God still reaches out to help us resist evil and make better choices. Cain lured Abel into a field and murdered him. Tragically, Cain ignored God's warning and let his anger consume him. He invited Abel to join him in the field, where he brutally murdered his brother, the first act of murder in human history. This act was not a crime of passion, but a calculated betrayal, showing how far Cain had fallen under the weight of envy. The field, a place of labor and peace, became a scene of violence. This pivotal moment marks the beginning of human violence and the heartbreaking consequences of sin. It teaches the devastating impact of unrepented anger and the gravity of taking an innocent life. God confronted Cain and asked where Abel was. After the murder, God approached Cain with a piercing question: "Where is your brother Abel?" Though God already knew, he gave Cain a chance to confess. Instead, Cain responded with defiance: "Am I my brother's keeper?" His evasive and sarcastic reply revealed a hardened heart. God's question is not just for Cain, it echoes through history, asking all people to take responsibility for one another. This moment shows how sin not only damages relationships, but can also lead to denial and further rebellion. God's pursuit of Cain shows his justice, but also his patience in giving sinners an opportunity to come clean. Cain lied, saying, "Am I my brother's keeper?" Cain's response to God was a denial of responsibility, encapsulated in the now famous question, "Am I my brother's keeper?" Rather than admit his guilt, he attempted to hide his crime and shift blame. His lie not only revealed his dishonesty, but also his disregard for the life and value of his own brother. This response shows the deepening of sin, moving from jealousy to murder, then to deception. It highlights how sin, if unconfessed, leads to a hardened conscience and broken relationships with both God and others. Cain's words serve as a warning against moral indifference and the denial of accountability. God punished Cain but also marked him with protection. God judged Cain for his actions by cursing him to be a restless wanderer, unable to settle or find peace. The ground would no longer yield for him, and he would live in fear of retaliation. However, even in judgment, God showed mercy. He placed a mark on Cain to protect him from being killed by others. This mark symbolized divine protection and a limit to human vengeance. Despite Cain's grave sin, God did not abandon him completely. This final